Hi folks, I'm Scott Giles, a certified consulting hypnotist and life coach. And every Saturday afternoon at 2:30 Central Time, I do a 5 or 10 minute video on some aspect related to the hypnotic arts and sciences or to life coaching. And today I want to talk about metaphor. Now, hypnotists will know how important metaphor is, but I'm going to elaborate it a little bit more with a special emphasis in how it applies to complementary medical hypnotism, which is primarily what I do on the hypnosis side of my practice. Now, a metaphor is describing something in terms that are not literally true, equating what is not actually equal. For example, you might say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, you're not saying that someone appears to have fallen to the ground and you're advising them that in order to get up, they should grasp hold of their footwear. What you're saying is, reach into yourself, find your own inner resources, and take responsibility for getting out of whatever difficulty you're in. When we say to someone, stand on your own 2 feet, we don't mean that they appear to be lying on the floor and are incapable of being bipedal. When we say time is money, we don't literally mean that you could take units of time and use them to purchase groceries at the store. We mean that time productivity matters. So, a metaphor is when you describe something in a way that the hearer understands is not literally true, but it still shows something useful about what's going on. Now, the Wikipedia article on metaphor, which if you like this topic, I urge you to explore, actually gives a great example that we devour a book of raw facts. We try to digest them. We stew over them. We let them simmer on the back burner, regurgitate them in discussions, and cook up explanations, hoping they don't seem half-baked. Well, that's just a whole string of metaphors. But it means a lot more when you have those metaphors there because they show nuance. What Thomas More, a writer in spiritual traditions, it shows soul. It shows a depth to the concept. I could just say we read books and we use them and we think about them and then we use them in arguments and we hope that the arguments are effective. Well, that's what that says, but it's richer to say we devour a book of raw facts, try to digest them, stew over them, let them simmer on the back burner, regurgitate them in discussions, cook up explanations, hoping they don't seem half-baked. That's a lot more interesting to listen to. It grasps attention in a different way. It involves different levels of the cognitive process and clarifies similarities between two different ideas. It's not just stylistic, it adds an actual depth of understanding. Now, in medical hypnosis, one of the things we often see, not always, but often, are that a person's medical complaints are somehow a metaphor for things that are actually going on in their actual lived experience. Psychiatrists often call these things somatizations, where the body becomes a metaphor for a psychological reality. For example, I'm a cardiac patient, and one of the things that the American Heart Association has noticed is that cardiac patients tend to struggle with issues of global hostility. That's true of me too. I have to watch my temper, and I've learned to moderate it and to process and release negative ideas and feelings quickly. You could say, though, that people who have cardiac issues are broken-hearted because we tend to fly off the handle quickly. We tend to feel a lot of internal emotional pain. And to the degree that the heart is a metaphor for a person's emotions, saying I'm broken-hearted is meaningful. You understand when I say that I'm having trouble with my emotions. And people who have that particular problem trouble with their emotions around hostility tend to have cardiac problems. People who have type 1 diabetes often will describe themselves in terms that use a metaphor of sour. And they're people who can't taste life's sweetness. They can't have sugar or the things that contain sugar. And so the diabetes is almost an expression of what's going on medically. The diabetes is an expression of what's going on in the personality, that they can't enjoy things. Again, you can find counterexamples for all of these, but overwhelmingly we see that people in different medical cohorts have certain personal characteristics in common in general. People who have irritable bowel syndrome or colitis, where the food that they've eaten processes through the bowel very quickly and they're not able to absorb maximum nutrition from it, are people who often will, in their psychological life, describe themselves as having difficulty holding on to that which nurtures them emotionally, intellectually, and so on. So they drop out of school, or they get into relationships that are not well thought out, and they suffer because of that. Just as they don't extract nutrition from their food going through their body because of the irritable inflammatory condition in the bowels, so they find in other areas of their life that they can't hang on to the things they need to be happy. In cancer care, we have a similar thing. And I'm probably best known for my work with people who are living with cancer. This was detected first by Dr. Lawrence Lashan in his book, Cancer as a Turning Point, a classic text in the field. I think it's now in its 4th edition. But the research Dr. Lashan did showed that people who live with cancer tend to be people who struggle with their boundaries. That is, they're not sure where they leave off and other people begin. So they end up doing more for other people than they should. They end up over caring about what other people are experiencing. A boundary problem. They're not sure where they should draw the line. And they tend to be, because of that, the caretaking, over-functioning members of their families who put everyone else first and themselves last, because they don't see where that boundary should be. And a big chunk of the work that I do with a cancer patient is getting them to be able to say no, at least some of the time, to put themselves first, at least some of the time, and to not take responsibility for the behaviors and feelings of other people. Now, how is that a metaphor? There is one creature in creation, and only one, that could survive without a good boundary between itself and its environment. Even a virus needs a protein shell. But there's one creature that doesn't need any sort of boundary, and that is the cancer cell. It is by its nature transgressional and invasive. So the cancer cell is a creature, a living creature, that does not respect boundaries. And people living with cancer tend to be experiencing boundary problems in their relationships and in their life. It's almost as if the illness itself is a metaphor for what's happening in the mind. And I have found that as people living with cancer get better at setting boundaries, they also do better medically. Now again, I want to stress, I don't want to push this too hard. I don't think that thoughts cause a disease. You could always find exceptions to any of these examples. But there is a level at which an illness can be a metaphor for something happening in the mind. Thank you very much for your time and attention today. I will be back next week. Next week I'll be talking about hidden acts of kindness and how the human brain has evolved to give us a negative view of the world. Please feel free to join me if that would be interesting to you. As always, if you want to discover how my coaching practice or my hypnotic work can help you in living your life, please feel free to reach out by email or message or check out my website. Thank you very much. Have a great day.